Hello, my name's Robert Latimer. I'm with Medical Sailing Ministries, and we're going to talk about cooking, mud brick stoves, and how many people around the world currently cook. And it's on something just like this: an open fire, maybe with 3 stones with a pot resting on it. The smoke, as you can see, can be really bad, and inside huts it's quite oppressive and leads to a lot of respiratory and other problems. And I've read that more people die of smoke inhalation worldwide than malaria, which is an amazing statistic. We're going to look at how you can improve on this, and of course, an open fire like this, the heat goes everywhere. You want the heat really to go to the bottom of this pot to cook it, not to heat up the environment necessarily. And you need a lot of wood, and because of that inefficiency. So what we're going to look at is a low smoke stove, a 3-step stove where you make the mould, you make the bricks, and then you make the stove. Making a stove out of mud bricks uses materials that most people can find. There's generally some clay and soil around, and also some fibre like coconut fibre or grass. And what it does is it contains the fire in the one spot. It focuses the flames and the heat to the bottom of the pot, just where you want it. And you also get a reburning of the gases and the particles within there as the flames come up and hit the pot and go back down again. Air is coming in through the back, so you get a very good updraft and a far more efficient fire. Far safer too, and you're elevating the pot, so it's much easier to lift the pot rather than always being down on the ground. So what we're going to look at is how to make one of these. And whilst you would generally make one of these stoves inside a hut, the fact is this one's been out in the weather for about 2.5 years. And even though they're just sun-dried bricks, they've held up to it very, very well. And there's been a couple of years of 2 winters of rain on this, and it's still very strong. Now, before we make the low smoke stove, we've first got to make the mud bricks. To make the mud bricks, we've got to make a mould, and that's what we're going to do now. What we're going to need is a tape measure, set square, saw, and a pencil. Any old wood will do. I'm just going to cut this out of ply, but you can use any old wood. Now the mould is pretty simple. It's 110 millimeters high on the inside and 330 millimeters wide, so it's 3 times as long as it is high. It's also 110 wide. So what I've done is cut out of slightly thicker timber the end bits, which are 110 by 110. So now we're just going to screw it together. So we just screw that into there, and that will go there, and this other end one will just go there. Then we're ready to go. Now depending on the sort of timber, you might have to pre-drill your hole. This stuff's pretty soft, so you can just screw straight through. If you've got one of these, it does make it a little easier, but not necessary. The old-fashioned way is just as good. To make it easier to lift the bricks when you're making them, what I've done is just screwed on an end piece, and so that's just going to go on there, and that'll make it easier to lift it off, and we'll see that a bit later on. So, just to confirm, it's 330 long, 110 wide, and 110 high. So it's 3 times longer than it is wide and high, and we'll see how they work shortly. To stage 2, and that's making the mud to make the bricks. We need clay, and clay is different to soil, but we need them both. And clay's that sticky stuff that you know really sticks to your shoes, and that'll be good in binding it, but we need the topsoil as well, and we also need some dry material. Now if you've got coconut fibre or pandanus, rip it up really small and put that in with the mix, and we'll see that shortly. All I've got is dry grass, and we'll use that here. So when we come to make the bricks, we've got to mix up all the soil with the clay, with the dry material, but we also need a nice level spot to lay the bricks out on, and I'll just clear that now. we've got our clay. We've also got the straw, or grass, or coconut fibre, or pandanus, whatever you've got. We've got to mix the two together. Now, the proportion in which you put them is really a bit of a trial and error. Depends how good your clay is. If you've got really pure clay, then maybe 1 shovel of this to about 4 of that. In this case, the clay is okay, but we'll probably put about I don't know, 1 to 2, something like that. If there's too much clay, then as they dry, it'll crack, and the bricks won't be as good. Okay, so we just mix it together, and any big bits, any sticks or whatever, just pull those out. We don't want those in the mix. And towards the end, once we've got all the clay and the soil mixed together, then we'll put in the grass in a sort of a, it's hard to say exactly how much, not too much, but you've got to put enough in. So it's sort of just an even mix, and we'll see at the end just, it's actually got to bind throughout the mix so that it gives it a bit of tensile strength, I suppose. We've just got to dig this up now, and then we'll start adding some water and making some real mud. It's now time to add the water, and I think it's going to take quite a bit of water, so we'll just mix it up till we get ourselves a really nice consistent mix. We'll just keep on adding the water. So you can see we've had the water running for quite a while, and I'll just keep moving the dry stuff in, and yeah, it's quite physical. Now we're getting close to that spot where it's wet enough, but the more you dig, the more you find dry spots, so you just keep turning them over and then do that sort of like that, and you can see it's starting to get a nice, you see that won't stay up as a brick, so that bit there is a little bit too wet, so we've got to combine some of the drier stuff with it, so we'll end up with a nice even consistency. If you've got time, soaking it overnight's good, because it goes right into the dry bits, and then it's a nice, doesn't take as much work. You basically let the water do it overnight. But we'll just keep digging this up, and we may well have added enough water. What I've been doing is moving the pile from here to here in small amounts, and that way it breaks it down a bit, and you can see if there's little dry patches, just give them a bit more water. But that's pretty good now, and we're just about ready to make the bricks. Okay, we're now at the stage of making the bricks. We've got the mould, just wet the mould just to make it a bit slippery on the inside so they come off a bit easier. We've levelled our ground, and we just find a spot for it like that, and then we put the mud in. So we push it right down, and then with a stick we just wipe it off. Like that. Now the remainder you can put that there for the next brick, and we'll see how she looks lifting her off. Now the moment of truth. You might have to give it a bit of a jiggle. Lovely. If it's too wet, it'll start to slump. The trick is really to lubricate the inside there, so putting a bit of mud on makes it a bit slippery, and then it's ready for the next one. Push it into the corners. and then lift her up. So here we are, we're doing the last one. I push it right down into the corners so we don't get any air pockets. A little bit of moisture on the top. Voila. We've made about 40, 45. You need about 20 for each stove, so we've got enough here for at least 2 stoves, and we'll make that in the next step. What we're going to do now is let these little fellows dry, and so long as it doesn't rain on them while it's in that drying phase. And these will be dry enough to use maybe in 5 to 7 days, depends on the conditions. But the moisture's being sucked out through the soil, through the air, and while it's not raining we can leave them exposed. If it's going to rain, we'll put a tarpaulin over the top, and that'll keep the rain off. But I'll show you this one. I made this one some time ago, and just listen to that. Very, very hard, and that's what these will be like in a week or so, and then we'll set about making the stove.